Hello, welcome to today's video of a review of the second semester honors exam from English 1. You are taking the first step and to make sure that you successfully complete the course by watching today's video. So before we get started, make sure you take notes on the information that we are getting ready to cover. At any time, you can pause, rewind, or stop the video to review any materials as needed. So a couple of important notes. You will be covering the same material that's on the regular exam in addition to the honors material from the course. So you will be doing approximately 17 multiple choice questions and one short answer on the regular portion of the class. And then additionally, you will be completing 2 multiple choice questions with 3 short answers that will be covering the honors material. So make sure you do review the regular portion of the class as well as the honors section. And here we go. With the honors concepts, we are going to be looking at internal and external conflict, foreshadowing, the time period of Romeo and Juliet, the language that's used in plays and poems, comparing and contrasting the structure of a play and poem, theme, diction, Romeo and Juliet itself, and William Wordsworth's poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. And this is found in Unit 6 in Lesson 5 of the regular portion of the class, as well as John Muir's essay, The Calypso Borealis. And that is also found in Unit 6 of the class in Lesson 3. So to start off, we're going to take a look at Romeo and Juliet. And we are also going to follow up with our next 2 texts is John Muir's essay, Calypso Borealis, and again, it's in Lesson 603, which is Unit 6 of the course, and William Wordsworth's poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, in Unit 6, Lesson 5. So these are going to be the 3 texts that you need to review for your honors portion. And we're going to look over the specific questions involving those in just a moment. Starting with Romeo and Juliet, we're going to look at foreshadowing and how it's used. So foreshadowing, remember, is a sign or a warning of what is to come in the future. So some questions to ask yourself: why is foreshadowing important in Romeo and Juliet? Look back at the text. Where can you see examples of foreshadowing and where it occurs? Also, let's look at the different types of conflict that we see in Romeo and Juliet. And remember, an external conflict is where the protagonist has to overcome obstacles that are set before him by outside forces. An internal conflict exists when the protagonist the conflict is with his thoughts or physical limitations. So think back to Romeo and Juliet. Identify a conflict that you saw in the play. Was this conflict external or internal? And who did the conflict involve? So how do the conflicts influence what happens in Romeo and Juliet? So because of a conflict, what ends up happening? Also, let's look at details from the time period in which Romeo and Juliet is set in. So one of your questions, you're going to be asked to identify the historical context. And this is what is referring to the time period when the play is set. So while you may be able to relate to many feelings that Romeo and Juliet and other characters have, you may also notice that their culture is very different from ours today. So taking a look, relationships between friends, families, and lovers were not the same several hundred years ago as we now experience in our life right now. And also from the time period, we look at marriage and love. Juliet is only 13 years old, and her family feels that she is more than old enough to get married. So in addition, her family feels they have the responsibility to choose a husband for Juliet. And so below, both Romeo and Juliet express that they will die without each other. Their feelings of love are intense after meeting for only a few minutes at a party. So looking at both of these examples, are these examples of a typical relationship in marriage today? Also during the time period, let's look at loyalty and friendship. So in our examples, in Romeo and Juliet, people are seen fighting and killing in the streets to show loyalty for the Capulets or the Montagues. It's not until the prince gets fed up with the bloodshed that he declares there will be punishments for anyone caught fighting. And also in Romeo and Juliet, Romeo's friends take him to a party to cheer him up. Once he meets Juliet, he leaves his friends and doesn't tell them where he's going. Mercutio is offended that Romeo did this, which indicates that it is rude for a young man to choose a girl over his friends. So, looking at both of these, are these examples of the laws and values that exist today? Do we have anything in common with these? So obviously the story of Romeo and Juliet, this is not a new story. We are very familiar with this. So in reviewing for the text, or the test, identify a historical situation or a story from another piece of literature that has a similar message or lesson to Romeo and Juliet. So look back at what we kind of just covered. Where can you find instances of this in another historical situation or another story? So now on the exam, you are going to be giving excerpts from Romeo and Juliet, and this is an example to kind of get you prepared. So our question is going to be, read the following excerpt from Romeo and Juliet. In a well-developed paragraph, identify the details of this story that reveal information about the time period. How are these details significant for the story? So looking at this excerpt, it's from Capulet, which is Juliet's father. And he says, how now, Chop Logic, what is this? Proud, and I thank you not, and yet not proud, Mistress Minion, you thank me no thankings, nor proud me no prouds, but fettle your fine joints against Thursday next, to go with Paris to St. Peter's Church, or I will drag thee on a hurdle thither. Out, you green sickness carrion, out, you baggage, you tallow face, hang thee, young baggage, disobedient wretch, I tell thee what, get thee to church on Thursday, or never after look me in the face. Speak not, reply not, do not answer me. So after reading this excerpt, we can see that Capulet, he is in a rage. He is so mad at Juliet because she has refused to marry Paris. So this is an example of the historical context where you would want to talk about how arranged marriages happened during this time period, how it affected everyone, and if there was a similarity between that time period and today. And based on this, how was this arranged marriage, how is it significant for the story? How did it impact everything else that happened? Next, we're just going to review the structure of a dramatic play. And a dramatic play is what we refer Romeo and Juliet as. So there are 5 acts in a dramatic play. We can see Act 1 is the exposition. Act 2 is the rising action. Act 3 is the climax. This is where everything comes to a head. Act 4 is the falling action. And Act 5 is the denouement. And this is where it wraps everything up from the story. Also, let's look at diction. Diction refers to an author's word choice. The words an author selects can be very important to the way the audience understands what is going on. So these words up on the screen, we can see lips, kiss, palm, touch, move, hands, holy, sweetly. So looking at these words, this is a cloud of words that's found in a conversation between Romeo and Juliet. So what do you notice about this specific diction that's right here that Shakespeare has used in this word cloud? So we can look and refer to this diction. The connotation that's being used is very positive. So we can kind of tell that Shakespeare's word choice is very positive to explain the relationship and the first meeting between Romeo and Juliet. So here we have a sample multiple choice question, and our question asks, what is the significance of the diction in this speech from Romeo and Juliet? So let's read the excerpt. It's the prince speaking. Rebellious subjects, enemies to peace, profaners of this neighborhood, stand still. Will they not hear? What ho, you men, you beasts, that quench the fire of your pernicious rage with purple fountains issuing from your veins. On pain of torture from those bloody hands, throw your mistempered weapons to the ground, and hear the sentence of your moved prince. 3 civil brawls bred of an airy word by thee, old Capulet and Montague, have thrice disturbed the quiet of our streets, and made Verona's ancient citizens cast by their grave beseeming ornaments to wield old partisans in hands as old, cankered with peace, to part your cankered hate. If ever you disturb our streets again, your lives shall pay the forfeit of the peace. So now we have 4 multiple choice answers. So we want to look as what is the significance of the diction? Why did Shakespeare write this way? So let's look at example A. The prince's diction indicates there has been too much fighting. The next time this occurs, those who are caught fighting will be executed. Or B. The prince's diction indicates that he sides more with the Capulets than the Montagues. He hopes that the Montagues will eventually die. Or C. The prince's diction indicates he sides more with the Montagues than the Capulets, and he hopes the Capulets will eventually die. Or D. The prince's diction indicates there has not been enough fighting lately, and the next time the families choose to battle, the prince wants to fight. So let's look at our question. What is the significance of the diction in this speech from Romeo and Juliet? So take your guess. You can pause the video. So our answer is A. The prince's diction indicates there has been too much fighting. And if we look at the text, we can see our diction is highlighted in red, where we can see the significance of the words that he used. Now we're going to look at Shakespeare's use of figurative language. And figurative language is used whenever you describe something by comparing it with something else. So the main points, a metaphor, it's a word or phrase that is used to make a comparison between two unlike things. So our example is, your room is a disaster area. Next is a personification. It's a figure of speech in which human characteristics are given to an animal or an object. So for example, my teddy bear gave me a hug. Our next example is a simile. A simile uses the words like or as to compare one object or idea with another to suggest they are alike. And our example is, she is busy as a bee. So let's look at this first example. So the following phrase, this room is as warm as a cup of cocoa. So looking at this example, what would you say is the type of figurative language that is used in this phrase? Yeah, this would be a simile, because we see that there's a comparison going on, and as or like is being used. And is this diction positive or negative? We can see this is a positive diction. So our example from the exam, you are going to be given a text excerpt, and you're going to be asked to identify the figurative language that is used in the excerpt. So we are going to be looking for a personification, a simile, and metaphor from this excerpt for Friar Lawrence. So take a moment and pause your video and see if you can identify the 3 uses of figurative language. And now we can see where it's identified. Our first line in this text is a personification. The gray-eyed morn smiles on the frowning night. So it's given characteristics to the morning, saying the morning smiles. Our next example in purple is the simile, and it says a fleckled darkness like a drunkard reels. So we're making a comparison using like or as. And our last example in green is a metaphor. The earth, that's nature's mother, is her tomb. So it's comparing the earth to being a tomb. And now congratulations, you have completed the review of the Segment 2 Honors exam material. So looking ahead, what do you need to do now? Definitely make sure go back and review the regular portion of the exam, as it will be included as part of your final exam material as well. You can look at practice exam questions. If you go to your gradebook and view your pretest for the second semester, this is module 4.00B, the pretest. Here you can see the sample questions you answered at the beginning of the course. You will not be able to retake the pretest, but you will be able to see the questions and review any other material from the course. So segment 2 is units 4 through 6 plus the honors. And when you go to take the exam, you want to make sure that you take the correct one. You will not be taking the 6.14 Segment 2 exam. That's for the regular portion of the class. You will be taking the S2.07 Segment Exam Honors for Segment 2. And this will include the regular material along with your honors assignments. So now you are ready for the exam, so what do you do now? Make sure that all your assignments from Segment 2 have been completed, and this includes your collaboration assignments. Study your exam review handout that's found on the help site and on your teacher's announcement page, and any second semester material. Contact your instructor for the exam password, and then take the exam and do fantastic. Thank you for watching today's exam review video for Segment 2, and if you have any further questions, please contact your instructor.